might you first meet the love of your life? At school? At work? On holiday? Or just while you're waiting for a train one day? Ask any couple and they will be able to tell you the story of how they met and decided to spend the rest of their lives together.
We met at a wedding in France, a mutual friend's wedding.
In Cannes, to be precise.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lovely wedding, yeah. She was a bridesmaid and I was one of the guests, and we hit it off.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you end up together?
We hit it off at the wedding.
We were put at the same table.
We put at the same table. We got on very well. It was a 3-day wedding, so we got to know each other very well over those 3 days. She's from Boston in the States, so she went back there. I went back to London, where I'm from here. And we sort of had an online relationship, didn't we? And then Skype
yeah.
For a couple of months. And then she came to London to do her MBA. And we spent about a year together in London, and now...
Year and a half.
Mm-hmm. And now we're in Boston living together.
Mm-hmm.
We met on Tinder, an online dating app.
We're both sort of in a similar sort of mindset. We're both quite fresh out of long-term relationships. I think we both went in like not really looking for anything special, but then the more we started talking, the more just things progressed, and now we're like about 2 years in.
But in an increasingly busy world, you sometimes struggle to meet new people. And occasionally, it takes something a little out of the ordinary to bring two people together. This is Olivia and James. They've recently got engaged and they're planning their wedding, which will take place in Scotland next year. Olivia and James's love story had quite an unconventional beginning.
I put myself forward for a blind date in a magazine, in a national newspaper. And 9 months later, I got an email saying, "We found somebody, would you like to go out for dinner and meet this mystery person?" So that's how I met James, was turning up to a restaurant and seeing him for the first time.
I also wrote into the magazine, and 2 days later they contacted me and said, "Actually, I know we said we wouldn't find anyone, but we have found someone. Would you be interested in going on a blind date?" To which I obviously said yes. And about a month later, we met at the restaurant. I was told Olivia's name, and I was told what she did, how old she was, and a few interests, and that was it.
Yeah, it was the same, and they told me that James was interested in architecture, writing, and theatre, I think. Oh, yeah. Sailing. Yeah, 3 things. So.
Yeah, and I remember you were interested in the arts, I think, and also architecture. I think that's where they connected us.
The very first time James and Olivia met was at a restaurant booked by the Guardian newspaper. Today, what do they remember about that dinner?
Well, that evening was very memorable. We talked about all kinds of different things. We talked about sailing and how we'd done the same run a few weeks earlier before we'd met.
There were lots of things, but the most remarkable thing was just how long we talked. It was sort of non-stop for about 4 hours until the restaurant closed.
Even before they had written the feedback for the newspaper article, Olivia and James knew that they wanted to see each other again.
After the date, I got a text from James the next day, which is perfect timing. And it was a really lovely text saying what a lovely evening he'd had, and it was very nice to meet me. So I immediately replied and said, "Brilliant, let's meet up next week." And so we arranged a time to meet up.
So Olivia and James became a couple. And 2 years on, what is it that makes their relationship work?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what makes our relationship work is, well, we've both got a good sense of humour, and I think James is hilarious. So I'm laughing a lot all the time.
That is very important, humour, I think.
Yeah.
Not just general laughing, but being able to diffuse moments with humour is very important. And if you don't share a sense of humour, it's hard to do that.
And the relationship works so well that they've decided to spend the rest of their lives together.
We had known each other for just over 2 years when I
Yeah.
proposed. Yep. About 2 years and 2 months, I think. We were going to the theatre to see a play, and it's the National Theatre, which is quite a cool building. And I thought I could propose somewhere in the theatre. So we then arrived at the theatre. Olivia said, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to lunch. I'm very hungry."
I had been promised lunch before the play, and then there was this change of plan. And I got really grumpy.
I said, "Why don't we just go on a tour?
Because we don't have time.
It'll be brilliant. It'll be a great, they're really good. It'll be really short." He said, "No, it won't." I went, "Come on, it'll be brilliant." And so Olivia stood there with her arms crossed whilst I waited for the lady to arrive to take us.
Yeah.
She took us straight to the biggest stage at the National. There are 3 stages, and the biggest is the Olivier stage. We needed something to prompt us, and so she said, "Well, you have the audience of the Olivier here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience?" And Olivia laughed, and I said, "Well, actually, Olivia, come and sit with me on the chair, on the 2 chairs." And she said, "Oh no, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "I've actually been planning this all week." And she said, "Planning what?" And at that point, I sort of slid off my chair and onto my knee, and asked her to marry me. She sort of gasped and said, "Yes," and grabbed me, and a big hug.
And the news of their engagement didn't just thrill family and friends.
The girl who set us up, she was lovely. And she was lovely, as things worked out. We stayed in touch with her, and, we told her quite quickly when we got engaged, because she'd been doing that job for quite a number of years, and we were the first couple she'd set up to get married. So
apparently when I sent the email or text or whatever it was, she stood up in the middle of their open plan office and put her hands above her head and said, We've got a blind date wedding!" So it meant a lot to her, I think.
yeah.